everyone, my name is Saidi Acolares and my topic for today is about skills acquisition. So, skills acquisition is an interdisciplinary science specific to the knowledge and about voluntary control over the body segment. The joint movement to solve the motor skills, referred to motor learning and control, it also does in collaborations, actions, perceptions, and intentions of the environment performance relationship. So it is essential as it has become a venue to understand how the neuromuscular system functions to coordinate as well as active the limbs and the muscles that are involved directly in the motor skills performance. So skills acquisition is defined as the dynamic process that involves continual adjustments. There are three stages of skills acquisition. One is the cognitive stage, the second is the associative stage, and the third is the autonomous stage. So the first stage is the cognitive stage. In the cognitive stage, the learner tries to learn a skill by receiving a verbal or visual knowledge. So the feedback matters. That's why we will paying attention to our instructions that includes informations related to the error we have been making and our lack of consistency. So this stage of motor learning and control is also known as a verbal motor stage. A verbal feedback plays an essential role in achieving desired result. So for example, let's assume a children visited a dance academy for dance lesson. They arrived early and saw the dancer dance in the gym. This is how they receive visual information about the dance steps. Now the instructor explained to them the intricacies involved in the action. So the second stage is the associative stage. In this stage, there are less information in verbal format, conscious performance, the little gains in performance gap, the awkward movement, making adjustment, and taking a long time to complete the task. In this stage, where the learner starts improving his performance after a lot of practice. He associates specific cues with the motor problem that he faces and tries to act accordingly to solve them. The fundamental has already been established and now it's time for improvement and refinement. In associative stage, the learner puts a lot of conscious efforts into the body movement to decrease the performance variability. So for example, the dancer improves his or her dance steps, the balance, the coordination, and etc. So the third stage is the autonomous stage. In this stage, where the player has gained information and practicing diligently has become automatic, the learner can accomplish it without any conscious thought as it has become ingrained in his movement. So this stage of motor learning paradigm takes years of hard work and training. It is reserved exclusively for elite players whose motor performance has become habitual and whose cognitive process is minimal. So in this stage, a player is capable of attending process information at the same time. The phase where thinking is less and response is automatic and looks like it's just a state of natural flow without any undue effort. So for example, a dancer already memorized the dance step that he or she is practicing last month. Amount of practice. The amount of practice is a person devotes to skills that are critical for learning motor skills. This is especially the case when the person has the attaining of expertise as a goal. So there are many situations in which it is important to determine the amount of practice of people should experience to achieve specific skills performance goals. Although limitation may exist in many of the situations in terms of the amount of time available for practice, the need to determine the amount of practice is required remains. So for example, a dance instructor or teacher need to determine the number of classes within a unit to devote to learning specific activities. In dancing, the amount of practice time available is typically restricted by a session schedule or by rules established by professional associations. Whole and part practice. Whole practice strategy provides opportunity to perform all the special temporal condition requirements of the skill. You're practicing everything together so it's easy to understand what the goal is. So part practice strategy provides opportunity to focus attention to a specific component or feature of the skill. So the whole part practice is skills acquired by practicing the movement in its entirety, whereas in part practice, it has learned by practicing its component before combining them. So use a whole practice strategy when the skills is low in complexity and high in organization. Use a part practice strategy when the skills is higher in complexity and is lower in organization. For example, when a dancer need to learn a task of memorizing steps of a K-pop song, this decision comes into play. Although this task has distinct and identifiable parts, the instructor must determine whether to have a dancer practice each part separately or always practice the whole sequence. Constant and variable practice. Constant practice is practicing by repeating the same variant of skills over and over. The variable practice is practicing by varying one parameter of skills from execution to execution in either structured or random manner. So, constant practice involves completing a task in the same manner and under the same condition each time it is performed. So, variable practice involves in completing tasks in variety of ways on or under varying condition. The role of mental practice. So, mental practice is the cognitive rehearsal of a physical skills in the absence of overt physical movement. It can take the form of thinking about the cognitive or procedural aspects of the motor skills, or engaging in visual or kinetic imagery of the performance of a skills or part of a skill. So for example, a gymnast is standing beside the floor exercise mat waiting her to begin her routine. Before actually beginning the routine, the gymnast goes through an entire routine mentally, visualizing that performance of each part of the routine, from the beginning to the end. Following this, the gymnast steps into a mat and begin the routine. So the gymnast uses a mental practice to prepare for an immediate performance of well as learned routine. Specificity and delegation of practice. Specificity states that training should closely match at the end that you wish to improve. So the more relatable the training, the more benefits it will have towards reaching your goal. The less specific, the more time it may take towards reaching those goals. Rules of feedback. Feedback can reinforce the execution of successful skills, the correct and change unsuccessful performance, and motivates the dancers and athletes to persevere with their training. So feedback consists of constructive commentary and information pertaining to a particular performance or skills. It is an extremely important element of all the acquisition stage. It can help the dancer and the athlete to improve their performance. So, strategies of skills. In the strategies of skills, there are three stages: the cognitive stage, the associative stage, and the autonomous stage, which is already discussed earlier. These three stages are very helpful for understanding, guiding, and accelerating the motor learning process. So the cognitive stage began by understanding what to do and is all about processing unrelated information. It involves by verbal convenience and acquisition or cognition of new information. So the associative stage, the learner has now shifted his focus from what to do and how to do, and making constructive attempts to transfer the declarative information into procedural knowledge. And lastly, in autonomous stage, thinking things is less and response is automatic and looks like just states of natural flow without any undue effort. So these three stages is useful in dancing because we need the three stages to learn and become a good dancer. So that's all for my topic. Thank you for listening.